I don't spend a lot of time on social media, but when I'm on there, it's between the people that I follow and the ridiculous amounts of ads and promotions. It's rare that the algorithm is teaching me something new, but it has smiled upon me. And I found a site called Attunement Speech Therapy that just completely resonated with me. So I reached out, and it's Megan Harcourt, and she is absolutely phenomenal as a speech pathologist. And I am so excited to bring her on today so that she can speak with me regarding all the changes in speech and language right now, as well as many of the same core beliefs that we share. Megan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to talk to you.
I'm so excited for this. So I have to ask with ASHA, I'm just going to jump right in here.
Yeah.
So with ASHA, which is the American Speech and Hearing Association, it's this big organization that is kind of like all encompassing of controlling the education and the furthering education and the credits for your profession. And I just need to know, is there like a tornado going off there right now with all the changes that are happening in what we're learning about autism? Or are they really doubling down and being like, nope, nothing to see here, no changes here? What is going on?
I really hope so. I don't have a very good pulse on what happens there because they're very separated from the people who are actually, doing the work. The
Yeah.
people they're supposed to be representing, right? So my perception is that, and their original statement about spelling was really disheartening to me, and so I kind of disconnected
I
my.
believe they called it ventriloquism
Oh,
about spelling.
yeah,
That's
I'm not
that.
surprised. Yeah, so that I mean, that really kind of, like, repulsed me from them, like, I really have
Yeah,
separated my, and there's a lot of speech therapists who are feeling this too, where they're like, "I don't know if this, organization really represents me anymore." So, a lot of people are, like, losing their or they're giving up their what we call
right.
the certificate of, clinical competence. And
Oh,
so
interesting.
because ASHA is not a regulatory agency, so they really have no like regulatory power. They just are kind of this corporation that gives you these letters after your name, and then they kind of guide the continuing education. But really,
Got it.
the states are the ones who have the regulation, authority.
Right.
So a lot of people are like, do we really even need these letters? And if they're not representing, my values, like, do we need to keep doing this? So there's kind of there's
But are
waves
they
in that.
controlling are they controlling insurance companies? Are they lobbying for what's covered by insurance and
I
what is
think
not?
so. Yeah, I think that's more so where their focus is, from my understanding.
Right.
Yeah, so that's where it gets murky for sure. Where I don't know. I don't really know exactly how it works, what they're doing specifically, but
Yeah, it's interesting. And it is important that we have the future of the trainings not just, based in ABA and not I'm not fully discrediting ABA. It's just it's one particular piece, and there's so much more beyond that
yeah.
it's we have to be open to all these different things. And let me hear more about you,
Mm.
because when I came across you, it was like, whoa, this girl, like, she is not afraid to say what she needs to say. She is out there. She is changing things with your thoughts. When did it become apparent to you that maybe all that you learned in school was not all there was to learn?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of kind of my own health journey, but also my family and kind of personal story because my brother got diagnosed. I was a little bit older, so he got diagnosed at 18 months, but I was about 13 or 14 at the time.
Mm,
So while I had awareness about what was going on, and my mom, because he had regressed, really focused on like the whole supporting a whole child kind of approach. So she really changed his diet and did all of these different things to
right.
support his system. And so really watching that, I kind of had that in the back of my mind. But as I went through school, that's not talked about. Like, we're not talking about diet or like detoxing and making detox pathways open. None of that was talked about. So I sort of just kind of hid it away in my mind, and then went through grad school and then started taking contracts. And like many other speech therapists, burnt out really quickly with all of the expectations of like massive caseloads, and I just like felt like in my soul something was missing, and I was just
Right.
not, what I was doing wasn't really supporting. And I ended up in a preschool with predominantly autism, and that really opened my eyes to it's really where I started realizing that motor planning was playing a big role for a lot of them because they were predominantly autism, non-speaking, and they were on iPads. Um, but I also would go and kind of push into the classrooms during lunch or snacks, and I'm watching like some of the things that they're eating and just like slowly started piecing together there's so much more that is here and we're missing it. It's almost like so hyper focused, like we're only looking at speech as if it's this isolated thing that happens in a vacuum from the rest of all of these different layers going on. And so once those kind of landed for me, I was like, I cannot, I cannot work another day
Right.
doing this without. It's like once you see it, you can't unsee it, you know. So I
Boy,
opened
do
my
I
own
do I
practice.
believe that. And that's a big part of the journey that my late husband, who actually passed away 9 years ago this month, and he was a pediatrician and started seeing things that he couldn't unsee,
Yeah,
and kind of did the same thing, got rid of the FAAP and started following the beat to his own drum, and just really went out there. And it's a very maverick move to do that because there's a lot of protection in the known and what's covered and not getting criticism. But the truth is, you can't really sit with yourself at the end of the day if you're not doing what you know to be true.
exactly. Yeah, that calling felt so strong I could not ignore it anymore. And it's like when
Yeah.
I look at so I I'm starting to talk about it and now I have a lot of speech therapists that are reaching out to me and I'm like it's you go into the field with these high hopes of like really supporting people and then you just do it. You get in there and you're like this is not what I thought it was going to be and you
Yeah.
kind of have to start like abandoning yourself and your intuition and your feelings about what it is that you're supporting in these kids. And so, yeah, I think people are starting to like wake up to that and things are starting to be like not as settled as they were.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
yeah, it's really cool to see.
I agree. And it's funny you were talking about in your training that you didn't hear about like the gut and neural pathways, and I know you talk about methylation as well too, and all these other things. Just for the record, as somebody who was married to a pediatrician, he also didn't really learn about the importance of the
Yeah.
gut and neural pathways and methylation. Like those were
Mhm.
all continued education type information that he had to receive because it's so geared. All of it is so geared to a one size fits all type of model without any belief that, because the problem with medicine and to a certain degree with any sort of a license piece is that it's so based on insurance,
Yeah.
and insurance only gives you this small finite amount of time to figure it out, and because you can't figure it out in that amount of time, then they need to find quick answers. And drugs are
Mhm.
quick answers. And certain, long term methods are just quick answers like, okay, we'll sign you up for ABA or whatever that is. And when there's a long answer, the practitioner doesn't have time to like go over that long answer. So they can't be mentioned because there's
Yeah.
no time to actually cover it. And that's why parents have to think really outside of the boxes to really get some more progressive ways of doing both medicine and therapies for their child quite often, because it's just not. And that's what I was so attracted with your message, because you really are looking at that. Um, and I loved what you said earlier about just all the things that you had learned along the way. And I know you understand that you can't just separate, you can't just
Mhm.
isolate the words coming out or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk about the combinational use of speech or spelling, because I really feel like communication, let's call it
Mhm,
communication,
mhm.
along with sensory integration, along with movement. And like, what is your feeling on that?
Yeah, I mean that's speaking about like getting all these different continuing educations, like what I really had to do was completely go rogue from the speech therapy, courses because I'm like, I feel like I've learned this already. I know what
Yeah.
they're doing, but I don't have all of these other steps that come before that. And a lot of that is nervous system regulation and motor planning and all of these other things that really were never talked. Even autism was like maybe a month or two long course in my graduate program. I left there and I'm like, my whole caseload is autism and I have no clue what I'm doing. And so,
Right.
yeah, the motor planning piece was massive and completely missed in my, from my training through, traditional school. So yeah, I just started learning about reflex integration came pretty early into my field, where I was starting to realize like we all have reflexes, and they're, we have them to protect ourselves. They come from the brainstem, and they're survival based. And so when we have a lot of kids who maybe have missed milestones, or they have things going on with their motor plans, a lot of these reflexes that are supposed to become integrated don't become integrated. And so they're kind of walking around, and the body is still getting communicated that they need to stay in that survival state. And so I started working really closely with a reflex integration specialist. And for my younger kids especially, I started working with reflex integration specialists, and really was encouraging any families that were interested in working with me to start there, because I know so much more about motor planning now that I'm like, those reflexes are never talked about really in any field except, very specialized areas. And what I was seeing was like really good results with more consistency in motor planning when the reflexes were addressed. And so it was like one training led into another, into
Mhm.
another.
Right.
And I'm like, we really are just missing completely the whole point by putting kids in these like one size fits all, 40 hours of ABA, 1 hour of speech. And then, there's a whole component that I think is really important too, which is just like parents' intuition and parents trusting the whole experience, that also just kind of gets steamrolled, and parents are just like along for the ride, and nobody stops to ask them, how they're doing. And like, I mean,
Yeah.
it's the whole picture was so glaring to me that I was like, this is not working for me. I need to completely rework how I'm providing services, and it's not going to be covered by insurance, unfortunately. But I just, there's so many things that I want to support in a completely different way. I don't think I
And
answered your motor planning question specifically, but I can go back into
no,
that.
I love that answer. I mean, like, I got plenty of great things from the answer, but yeah, I mean, and before you answer, then maybe the motor planning, because you kind of made me think about other things as well, is, you know, it's that motor planning disconnect, the apraxia piece
Mhm.
of it, the very difficult task of being able to do any form of communication if they are not connected to their body.
Mhm. Yeah. I really started thinking too, like, what is communication really? And it's like an exchange of information, but also
Right.
energy, And so really the energy piece came on pretty strong for me as well, because I started picking up that the kids were so sensitive to whatever I was bringing in. If I was anxious, like they were just mirroring it back to me. And what I realized with that in terms of like the mind body disconnect that a lot of people talk about is, I was thinking like, how often am I like in my body and really like feeling myself here on the ground? And how often
Yeah.
am I asking these kids to come into their body, but I'm not doing it? I don't think it's fair for me to ask them to be regulated and be in their body and be present with me. And I was like, am I doing any of that? Am I regulated and present and in my body with them? And so, yeah, it really, all of the pieces with the mind body disconnect and like coming in back into their body, it was so resonant for me, because I was like, I need that too. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like I need that support as well.
Truly.
Yeah.
Truly. And when we talk about that, those pieces of regulation and being able to feel in our body, like as a pediatrician, my late husband's big thing was, I'm not trying to cure autism. I'm trying to
Mhm.
help them feel better in their body.
Yeah.
And that has always been my message, because I love parts of Joey's autism. I wish I had his abilities. And now that he's a speller, he has a better vocabulary than I do. So I will never, again, discount or not understand the competence that he has. But yet he does still so powerfully struggle in his body.
Yeah.
And I do too. I mean, as a woman who's gone through menopause, when I've had hot flashes in the past and the hot flash comes up, I immediately go into a panic attack. And
Mm,
I always say to myself, and it only lasts like 45 seconds or so. And I only bring it up because when I get into that panic attack mode, I know it's only going to last about 45 seconds. But I always
yeah.
ask myself every time, what if that wasn't going to go away? What if
Mhm.
that level of anxiety just hung with me all of the time?
Right.
And we blame mental health a lot on it just is like that
Mhm.
we
Mhm.
have anxiety, and it just is like it's just
Mhm.
a normal part of life. But I know too much about that because I know about the gut, and I know that the neurotransmitters are fired up in the gut, and I know that serotonin is regulated by the gut, and I know that a lot of these kids, as a picky eating specialist, which I am, and have written program, I have a home course on picky eating. I know that these kids aren't eating things to help their gut or feed their gut,
Mhm.
and it's, to me, I would say, of any of the therapies that I do, if I didn't first have the foundation of helping Joey's gut stay calm and kind of out of dysbiosis, then I think he wouldn't be available to me for any of the other therapies that he does. So it
Yeah,
starts with gut.
definitely. There's a lot of voices, really loud voices, like in the community that will. I think it's changing a little bit, but there's been voices in the community that if you said anything about gut or you said anything about that, anything around the world or involving like a cure, and not even people saying cure, but it was very triggering to a
Yeah.
lot of people. And it's really like, can we sit with and accept this idea of like, yes, and like, I accept my child completely right now, but I also want them to feel really good in their body. And I know that they don't, or they're feeling really anxious, or at any moment, they just are feeling out of control. That's really scary. That's scary to live in a body that you feel like you have no control over. And so anything to support that feels like it's not, it doesn't have to be one or the other. I don't have to cure and I'm also not accepting them. I'm just trying to support their body and I can accept them at the same time.
And there's so many reasons between the affordability of healthier foods, as well as the ability to even know what to do with them, to the ability to navigate through our very conflicting society of what healthy is and all of those other pieces. It becomes super overwhelming to a lot of
Yeah.
parents. And then it becomes almost a trigger to them, like, because
Mhm.
when they hear healthy food can help our kids, a lot of parents feel really threatened, as if we're saying you're not a good parent if you're not
Yeah.
doing healthy foods. But there is a gradual process of getting, just always kind of moving the needle a little bit, and maybe starting with some things to help with healthy gut. We're not saying you have to full go out and do a perfect diet immediately, but if you can kind of move the needle on it, most people that I find see the difference so rapidly when they do change and move the needle that it becomes encouraging for them. And so, do you work yourself with people with healthy gut, or do you refer out for that?
I mean, I have I have picky eating and selective eaters trainings. And so I will do that. But what I find a lot of times is parents are so stuck in fight or flight themselves that
That's it.
even
That's
the
it.
idea of making a change is so overwhelming to their system that they just can't do it. So usually I'm like a couple steps even before that, I'm like needing to kind of unwind some of that and see if we can
Good.
sort of sit in and really like just kind of talk out and hold the space for what's going on and what's coming up for you. It seems like a lot of families that get an autism diagnosis just get stuck in that fear, anxiety, and worry. It makes it really hard to take action or like take any steps. And so, yes, I can and do support selective eating for some families when I feel like they're like a change isn't going to be so threatening to their system that they just are going to freeze and feel overwhelmed and just quit.
Right. Right. No, I hear you on that one tremendously. And I've worked with families for over 30 years on those pieces of it. And I think really another part of that is that a lot of the parents themselves now are selective or picky eaters.
Yeah.
And it becomes even more scary that if they're going to change it for their child, they're going to have to change it for themselves. And I
Mhm.
think that puts a lot of people into a real strong panic mode. But in my background, I know what the body needs in order to work optimally. And I also know what the ingredients being put into our bodies are doing to our bodies.
Yeah.
And it seems like my motivation is just kind of along with the knowledge of how can I expect him or myself to be at my top performance if it's just garbage in all the time and not enough nutrients to kind of support my brain to work, which brings me to the next piece, which is methylation. and how methylation is the conversion of dopamine to epinephrine to norepinephrine. And it's a challenge. I mean, there's pieces of it that are genetic, and then there's parts of it that are have to do with our diet. But it's very, very hard to focus and concentrate if your methylation is off.
Yeah, I mean, it's all of these different things are playing a factor for everything. And if our kids are struggling methylating and they're not getting the nutrients that they need for their brain to function optimally and they're stuck in fight or flight, I mean, there's so many things to consider that are playing a role. So when I opened the doors to these different things, I'm like, I'm focusing on speech, but that's so far down the line if I don't have a child who feels good, you know?
Well, then talk to me more about, because I know energetically you really want to work to help just bring calm down to the family. What is your approach? And I'm assuming there's not one approach. It's different for every single family. It has to be. So
hmm
how do you kind of like tiptoe in there?
Yeah, it's really. I mean, because I've been more vocal on social media. The families that are finding me are pretty aligned, so they're open to that idea of sort of starting with parents first. Some of the trainings that I've done is like craniosacral fascial therapy.
Oh, love it.
Um,
I love
yeah,
it.
and so sometimes I did it for the kids, honestly. Some of them that would just kind of climb in my lap. I was like, I wish I had a tool to like work on nervous system while they're there. But really, what I realized was that parents often are going to benefit a lot, and the kids really reap the benefits of that. So sometimes I'm just working like kind of hands-on body work with the parents and just kind of talking through some things. A lot of things just get held in the body, and that the body is
Yeah.
communicating too to are we safe? Are we not? What, information is coming in from the body all the time. And we usually have maybe emotions that get stuck in different spots and we're just carrying all this weight. And sometimes with that therapy, we can kind of unravel and unwind some of that. Just to really like spend some time with parents. Like, you matter too, your
Oh,
child is looking to you to like co-regulate and to get into this kind of um safe space. And so if you're stuck in panic and fear, it's not like a blaming, it's just a you matter too. You can't fill their cup with your empty cup, so we need to figure out how to support that. And then things really click, I feel like, when parents can kind of shift out of this I have to do everything for them, and
yeah.
then you're last on the list. So as much as I can, I'm trying to, like, I'll do kind of a half and half where I'm like, I'm going to work with your child, but also, how are you? Like, let's check
It
in with you
does. It makes
first.
such a difference. This is a little bit of a plug, but I'm going to talk about the retreat that I'm going to be holding
Ooh.
very soon. So this came about because I will have a really close friend of mine who does nervous system reset retreats.
hmm
And she's in the Kansas City area, and she does all kinds of retreats all over the country and Costa Rica and such. And she asked me if I'd be interested in doing a retreat with her. And I thought, yeah, this is a great combination right here. She's also a speech pathologist, by the way. Her name is Andrea Arlotti, and she is somebody who also understands the importance of the nervous system. So when I was thinking about when Joey was first diagnosed, and I was so alone, and back in those days, we would get together with other families who had the autism diagnosis in person because the internet was not really a home thing yet. And those connections were absolutely the most valuable thing in the world because we would hug each other. We would watch each other cry. We would hold each other's hands, and we would laugh together, and we would celebrate things together, but we were physically together.
Yeah.
And now with social media, those connections aren't there anymore. And parents are feeling more isolated than ever, and they can't go places with their kids, and they just don't have friendships and the way that could really feed their soul. So it was my desire to just get small groups together. And I'm going to take this throughout the country and bring small groups together for a weekend. And I fully get that it's very hard for parents, for a mom, for example, to get away from a Friday to Sunday. But that being said, also, I know for me, I didn't think it was going to be possible, but a lot of people stepped up to the plate when it came down to I need to do something for me, when I really knew that this was something that I physically needed to do for myself.
hmm
And I just want to bring that to people because I do feel that when it starts in many cases with us and our calmness and our ability to be able to show up and have the stamina that we need to get through all the hardships.
Absolutely. I retreats have been probably one of the most healing things for me too. You really don't realize that you don't have it, and then you get in community and you're like, "Oh, this is how I'm supposed to live." Feel supported and like feel seen in your
Yes.
experience. There's nothing more profound than that. I
Yeah.
think that's amazing. I would encourage everyone to get in
I'm
community with
excited.
people.
I'm really excited for it. We have several towns that I've asked us to bring it to them, so we're gonna just move around with it and have some fun with it. And I'm gonna do all the cooking.
Wow.
I'm a farm to table kind of cook, so it's gonna be super super healthy food because I want healthy guts as you walk out of
Yes.
there.
Amazing. That would
That's
be
the other part.
amazing.
So let's go back a little bit to the energy part.
Mhm.
And can we talk a little bit about telepathy because it's getting so much attention right now and your feelings and thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. I think I didn't really know a lot about energy. I mean, in the West, it's very kind of woo woo and like dismissed. Until really I was working in that preschool with the autistic kids, and I was feeling like I didn't need to say anything, and it was very clear that they knew what was going on in my
Right.
system. Like they were either drawn to me because I felt like I was calm and I had just meditated or I went on a walk, versus like coming out of a contentious IEP and I was very in my head and
Yeah.
just kind of like feeling really heavy. Like I felt the difference in how the kids were responding to me. And then I learned a lot about energy and how really everything is energy. Our thoughts are energy, our emotions are energy, we are energy. And it all like clicked to me. I hadn't put the telepathy piece together yet at that point. I knew that there was something energetically going on with like the mirroring and things were happening in that realm. And then when the telepathy tapes came out, I was like, of course. Like, of course
I
this
know.
makes sense.
Was it, you know what? I got to tell you, Megan, that was exactly my feeling. It was like,
Mhm.
of course, like I didn't have to question it, but it was like, why did I not think of that before?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it came with all of this, like, me questioning, "What am I doing in speech therapy? What is communication really?"
Yeah.
And I kinda went through this phase where I was like, "Who am I to tell someone how they need to communicate with me?" You know, it's like one thing if you get the kids on the boards and then they're saying, "I really
Yeah.
wanna work on my spoken," I wanna work on spoken language,
Yeah.
but to have, like, my full focus on that, especially when kids were already communicating, like, that's part of, I think is really interesting. Some of the kids that are spelling are like, I thought that I was saying hi. Like I thought that I was talking to you like with my mouth,
Oh.
you know? And they
That
just
is
had
so interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, that would make
And no one
total
was responding
sense.
to them, you know?
Actually, my husband does that. He
Yeah.
just this morning we had a conversation and I'm like, "Hello, I'm waiting for an answer." And he's like, "I thought I answered you." So
Yeah, you sometimes answer in your head. So to me, this wasn't a very big stretch, especially knowing that they have this kind of mind body disconnect. And like, well, they probably, yeah, of course, they're thinking they said something or they're responding, and
yeah.
they just are so disconnected from the actual physical movement of that, yeah.
Yeah. And what I'm kind of I had the best conversation with Joey yesterday. So, he's living in his apartment now with his caregiver. So, but we have every Thursday together. And so I got to spend the whole day with him. And as I stopped, he loves to listen to podcasts. This is something new for me because I didn't presume competence for years and I didn't realize he was taking in all that I was listening to. So we listened to, it's a great podcast, by the way. It's called History That Doesn't Suck. And it gives you like from the very beginning of time all the way to, this great history lesson that's super interesting. I'm learning a ton. And we're listening and I paused it for a second. I was like, let's just talk for a minute. Let's just kind of connect. And I said, I want you to know that I am trying to calm my mind more so that I can communicate the way that you communicate with your silent amigos, as he calls them, his silent amigos, through telepathy. And I said, so that I can communicate with you on that level. Like, I know you are continuously doing everything to try to bring spellings to our communication, but I also am wanting to be more in your world.
Yeah.
And I'm doing my best to kind of communicate that way. And he just started laughing, and he was just like, I could feel the way to go, mom. Like, this is good for both of us, is really what
Right.
I was feeling. Is this is good for both of us to be able to bring ourselves to a higher energetic level, to be able to have the unspoken word, and to be able to just view each other that way. And
Yeah.
somebody actually commented on a video I posted yesterday about our trip to Seattle when we spent the day, is, oh my gosh, the way he looks at you. And that has completely changed. When I presumed competence, when I know just how amazing his capacity for tapping into a consciousness that I can't even fathom yet in my life, because he is so connected to these such a higher consciousness,
Mhm.
that my whole energy towards him has shifted, and it's kind of one of awe. I feel like we have to work with the parents to, this has brought Joey probably more happiness than his ability to communicate, is the fact that he's understood now. I think that's the
Yeah,
bigger piece.
absolutely. I've worked with some kids too where that actually has been the most profound shift. Like lots of behaviors and then just planting the seeds with parents. He's understanding everything you're saying, so let's talk to
Yeah.
him as if he is. The behaviors almost always like start to go down once they feel like people are actually able to see and understand them. I mean, of course, right? It's just like this such profound misunderstanding of their capacity for so long that I mean it just becomes, of course they have really like a lot of difficulty being around and in settings where people have really just completely underestimated them.
Yeah. And I'm interested what also in your thoughts of meltdown behaviors, which Joey has a lot of. He hits his
Mhm.
head, and that's why, if you've seen videos of him, he stuffs his arm in his coat because he's trying to deter himself. It's almost a involuntary impulse to hit
Yeah.
his head. So when you have something like that, so how would you best go about working with somebody who already on a great diet? We're presuming we really feather his nest as much as we possibly can, giving him lots of activity, but still struggles with those impulses. What angle do you still need to approach to help calm that?
Yeah, I think it could be a lot of different things, like you said, but I think part of it is, well, at least when I'm coming in. When I'm coming in, it's communication. They don't have access to communication, so there still could be some of that. And so,
Right.
does Joey, is he able to tell you like a little bit about when he's having those, or he just says, I have no control over it, it's just happening? And
That's through spelling, he's been able to say he doesn't want it to happen. It just comes on and he can't stop it. And also, in listening to the words of other spellers, tried to deter me from hurting myself. But there's
Mhm.
also a piece where when he's in full blown head hitting, he has to get it out. It's like an itch that just has to get out.
Yeah.
And that is so frustrating as a parent to watch, that, okay, you just have to let it go.
Yeah, it's so tricky and so hard. It's so different for every family and every
Right.
student that I've really ever worked with. Some like very like random things that we've tried have worked really well that I don't think would work for everyone. But
Yeah.
I mean, once you've covered, like my approach is always let's like look at all of, the kind of hierarchy. For me, it's the energy and how is everybody doing? Is there a lot of stress going on in the environment? And once they reach that point too, I mean, it's an impulsive motor plan, so there's not conscious thought behind it, and that is like I think something that gets that's really hard, especially for kids in
Yeah.
school because that's coming from the limbic system, and the limbic system is very highly emotional. So there's not a lot of it's not a motor plan that's going through this process of like, okay, let me consider what's going to happen after this. It's like a very quick neural pathway, and so
Right.
it's really hard to interrupt it because it goes so fast usually, and then they're kind of stuck in it. So they get misunderstood a lot of that in school thinking, well, they're doing it because they're not compliant or they don't want to do this. And a lot of times it's not, they just have no conscious,
Yeah.
there's no control over it. So
Yeah.
that's really unfortunate. But my approach is always, okay, we're just going to like kind of check each one and see, is it pain related? Is there something that we're
Right.
missing? Because sometimes it's like shoes. Sometimes there's something
Yeah.
in the shoe that you can't see, or there's, a lot of times headaches or migraines or something else is going on physically in the body. And then, energy around the parents, like what's going on with you guys? Is there something that's disruptive? And when he gets to that point, are we able to be sort of like, a safe space and kind of co-regulate and of course we're just doing our best. The way that our society is very stressful. We have a lot on our mind. We're moving from one thing to the next thing, and just being conscious and also gentle with ourselves as parents and providers.
And to know that, but they don't want to be in this meltdown mode. And it's funny because Joe used to always sob, like really
Mm,
sob after it was over. And a part of me wondered, was he just sad about that situation or whatever it was? And I've since learned that a lot of it is just this kind of, I don't want to call it a self-loathing, but just a really disappointment in themselves that they couldn't hold it together. At least that's
mm,
what some of the spellers are communicating. That's what Joey has indicated before. He's not crying or mad at me. He's crying or mad at the fact that he doesn't have control over these impulses. And often he hurts because he just finished banging his head and it hurts. That's where the real sadness comes in.
yeah, that's
And I think when I
cool.
really understood that is when I went from this out of control mom of stop it, stop
Mm,
hurting yourself, to taking a breath and being like, I can imagine that this is so hard for you. And that really has changed our relationship since I stopped taking it personally that his
mm,
meltdown was because of me, and then putting even more pressure on him because now not only did you deal with the meltdown, but now you made your mom feel bad and all of these other pieces. If
yeah.
he knows that I understand that he's doing the best that he can, it at least helps calm the guilt when it's all over with.
Yeah, definitely. I see that a lot with parents too that are is as long as you can kind of get to that space of just trusting that they don't want to be doing that. I mean, that's not enjoyable for them. Even
Right.
some of the like stems that some of them have once they're on the boards, they're saying, I don't want to be doing that. I can't stop
Yeah.
doing it. So if you can like redirect me to something else, even that understanding between a parent and their child, I feel like it's just a different understanding. It's like, okay, I see where you're struggling and I'm here for you. It doesn't necessarily know you're going to know how to prevent it, or it's just like a trial and error and keep trying different things. But just the understanding, I think, can be so helpful.
Well, how do you a, discern the difference between when you need to redirect, when there's a looping that just kind of like maybe needs to get out and just finish it up like an OCD type of a need to like hear it or whatever it is, versus redirecting to something different? I mean, is that a big intuitive feeling that you just feel as to when it's time?
Yeah, I wish I had an answer. I feel like a lot of times it is it's just like getting to know the student that I'm working with. And of course, like my goal is always to get them on the boards, and then if they have something to tell me about
Right.
that's my ideal situation is they tell me stop or let me finish that. But it's kind of just an intuition. If there's something that we're working on that I know they really like and they're getting so excited that's preventing them from
Right.
doing it, and I have some kind of skill, I'll just try different things. And usually I'm just really cautious of like, um, if I can sense any little thing that's like getting them to the point where I can see they're getting agitated or something I'm doing is making it worse, I'll back off. But if it feels like there's something that I know them pretty well and I know they want to participate in something that we're doing, that's when I'll kind of redirect or see if there's something that I can do um, that makes it feel better. But it really is getting to know. It's almost like a dance, right? You're really
It is.
getting to
It
know
really
them
is.
in a very, very like intricate way of trying to
Right.
even
And,
read
it's why
bodies.
so many parents struggle with caregivers is because they don't, it's a new dance every single time.
Yeah, and the
And that's
turnover.
turnover can be so big. Tell me about your practice. Like what is it you're doing in your, like, I got to see all these wonderful benefits that you have, but you have your own practice. Are you just a one person show?
Yes, one person show. I do a hodgepodge of all kinds of different things right now.
Right.
Um, there's some families that I just do CFT with. There's families that they want like all of this, all of
Wait, can
the.
you explain what is CFT
Yes,
just
CFT is the craniosacral fascial therapy. So it's
right.
just like the hands-on body work and really
Which
feeling and trusting the body.
I know I did a show on craniosacral, was one of my first ones that I did because I'm such an advocate of it.
Oh yeah, yeah. When I learned about it and some of the benefits that some of the families were saying, I was like, I would love to learn, more about
Yeah.
that. And yeah, so I incorporate that as much as I can. And I'm also doing sessions with like little kids that'll just use it, kind of embedded in like a play and building trust and relationships. But yeah, I do a hodgepodge of things with that. And I also will do coaching, really just approaching the child from a whole child lens and then explaining about the different motor plans and how we can kind of support some of that through nervous system regulation and how important parents' energy is. And now I'll be sending them
Yeah.
all to your retreats. and
Yay. Awesome. I'll get you some flyers.
yeah, um, that's amazing. And then just going through like the gut health and nutrition. And
Yeah.
sometimes parents are not ready to hear all of that. They really just want, a more straightforward speech therapy. So sometimes it's planting seeds. Other parents are like, I want all the information all at once. And then
Yeah.
recently I've had a lot of speech therapists reaching out to me for, support and kind of how to do something different
Oh,
outside of
that's so good.
the model.
And
So I'm
that
kind
that
of
brings me
shifting
so
into
much
that.
hope.
Yeah. There's so many out there that are very clearly understanding that the models we have are broken and it's not serving them and it's not serving their kids. And so they're trying to figure out how to break out of it. But it becomes sort of a spiritual practice too, because you got to have to
Yeah,
put your beliefs out there into the world and let
it
it be
does.
okay. Hmm.
Now are you in Milpitas, California?
I'm in Fremont. Yeah.
Fremont.
Mhm.
Okay. Which I think we mentioned when we first talked. I grew up in the Berryessa area of San Jose, so
Yeah. Yeah. Close.
I know that area tremendously well.
Mhm.
And do you do online appointments or do you do mostly just in person?
I do a mix. I also am doing spelling right now, so that's probably 50% of my caseload. So I do
Oh,
in-person spelling. I do a couple virtual spelling like consults, and then I have in-person families, of course, that I'm doing craniosacral with, and then I do some online coaching as well. So I'm just kind of mixed, and I also have a podcast. So, um,
so
yeah, so
what
I
it
do the variety.
is the name of the podcast also Attunement Speech Therapy?
No,
Or
it's the Holistic Speech Path podcast,
oh, I
and
love
it's
that.
with my colleague Fatima, and both of us have our own practices and are really focused on this whole family system
Cool.
approach, and
I'm
just
gonna follow you.
yeah, it's great
Are you
interviewing
on
different people.
which where can people stream it?
Apple, Spotify, so
YouTube?
far,
Are you on
not
YouTube
YouTube,
yet?
not yet.
If you can figure out Apple, you can figure out anything. Like Spotify was so easy.
Yeah.
Apple, Apple was just like they wanted like permission for your firstborn. Like they make you really jump through the hoops when it
Hmm.
comes to
I
posting.
had to
I always
redo the picture for them like 4 or 5 times.
when I started my podcast with Apple, before doing the podcast, if I would see that somebody was on Spotify and YouTube and like not on Apple, I'd be like, "What? Why were you not on Apple?" Now I totally understand.
Yeah.
they, they're
Once you're
hard to
in
get on.
though, you're in, you just
Yeah,
it's upfront.
that's the problem. I hope nothing ever disconnects it because I'm not sure I can get back in.
Yeah. Yes, I
Uh,
feel that too.
oh, that's so good. I want everybody to follow you. So can you give your website and also your handles on and what social media you're on?
Yeah, I'm on TikTok and Instagram, like I said, sort of sporadically. But it's Attunement Speech Therapy on TikTok and Instagram. And then my website's attunementspeechtherapy.com.
Perfect. Easy to
Yeah.
know. Thank you for being on and I hope you will come on again because I feel like we could just keep going.
Yeah, I have a lot to say always, so I'd love to.
I
Yeah.
appreciate you being on. Thank you everybody for joining us and we'll be
Yeah,
back
thank
with you next
you.
week. Thank you.
Thank you.